From the Starr Conspiracy and the content channel, Hey, Bret Starr. I'm Bret Starr. This is Long Strange Trip. Episode 2.
So, my name is Erin Sanders. I have been at the Starr Conspiracy for coming up on 6.5 years now. I started in the summer of 2015. I sort of orbited around you guys for years. I've been in Fort Worth, and it was always the place I wanted to work. And so Nancy Crabb, one of our other creatives, reached out that summer of 2015, and not looking back. It's been great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you know I met, you probably knew this, but I met Nancy at a farmer's market in Fort Worth. Jennifer was selling in a booth next to her while they were making their coffee. Her and Rupert were making the Black Flag coffee and all that stuff. But that's how I met Nancy shortly after we moved here from Boston.
No, I don't think I knew that, actually. What a small world. Yeah.
It really is. Were you born in Fort Worth?
No, let's see. We moved around a little bit as a kid. My dad was in the oil business, so we kind of scooted all over, but I don't know that I'll claim it, but I'm from Houston, a little suburb called Tomball. We spent a lot of time there, and then I went to TCU. So
cool. That's
how I wound up in Fort Worth and just loved it and stuck around.
Tomball is a good baseball city. One of my best friends, Beatty Wilson, came from Tomball, Texas. So I've actually visited Tomball.
You know where? See, when I was there, it was so small, and now I can actually say Tomball and people know where it is instead of just lumping it into Houston. But yeah, big baseball city.
At what point did you realize the pandemic was going to change everything?
Gosh, that's a good question. I think initially, I don't want to say that I didn't take it seriously, but I think it was maybe just disillusionment that it's, the first couple of weeks, even months, the case counts weren't necessarily that high in Fort Worth. So I think it kind of maybe it didn't feel real, or it felt like it was something that was going to pass. I mean, we've never experienced this, so it's kind of hard to know this is going to be a big deal. And then it just kept going. And I think, for me, maybe it was weeks, months in where it was like, oh, this is not going away and this is serious. I think it probably took me a little while to kind of wrap my head around the severity of it.
Yeah. Did it change your outlook on life, or has it changed your outlook on life or your life plans, or, kind of what you see as your plans for the future?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, it's such a big event, and it's such a weird disruption in, it affected everything. Off the top of my head, the first thing I thought of was actually just relationships and, friends. And it really sort of drove home to me, because you're not seeing everyone every day. You're not, going to the bar and running into people. You have to be very purposeful in keeping up with people and staying in touch and finding ways to, spend time together, or at least to talk or stay connected, as opposed to just sort of letting it happen, in the course of the day. That was, I think, one of my biggest takeaways, at least interpersonally, just really shining a light on these are my people, and I need to be more proactive and make sure that we make time for each other.
What's going on with that mural?
Oh, thank you. That was, I don't know if you can see it behind me very well, but so when we moved in, that was kind of the first thing I did when we bought the place. It was like, I have my own wall to do whatever I want. And so I painted 14 feet tall by 21 feet long. And definitely the biggest piece I've ever done. And I'll tell you, as an artist, I love it, but you should never live with your own work. Because you just, especially in light of the pandemic and being home so much, it's like, you're just like, well, I wish I would have done this, or why did I do that? It's just constant critique, but it was really fun. And someday I'll probably repaint it.
Well, you you embarked on a grand adventure during the pandemic, didn't you? What was that all about? I
I
only heard bits and pieces of it. It's kind of like a legend, and I didn't know if any of it was true. So where did you go? What did you do?
I don't know about a legend, but it was a lot of fun. So, um, I'm a very outdoor oriented person. That sort of drives me. That brings me happiness, creativity. I love being outside. And as you know, it's very hot in Texas in the summer, like soul crushingly so. And so I had actually made plans before the pandemic to take off and work remotely um, from, just during the summer, July through whenever it stopped being hot in Texas, I would come home. And so then the pandemic happened, and it was, kind of should I go, should I not? And it actually, it worked out really well that first year. I guess that was 2020. Just because I was outside, I was camping, I was away from people. And so in that regard, it's weird to say, but because we were all remote at work instead of trying to do the hybrid thing, which was my plan previous to the pandemic. And I wasn't really sure how that was going to work out. But with us being all remote, I took off in July and went through Colorado, Arizona, and Utah, New Mexico as well, and just worked remotely. I split my time between during the week, making sure I have to stay somewhere with Wi-Fi, be that an Airbnb or staying with friends, or even this year I honestly lived out of my car and worked out of the car quite a bit. But and then just taking off on the weekends, going and exploring.
And how long were you gone?
This year I left July 4th and I got back, I want to say October 16th. So a little over 3 months.
Wow, that's amazing. And so I kind of had this picture that you were like in this like van or something, like living van life, but it sounds like you were in a car. What were you like when you say you were living in your car? Like what, is it like a Volkswagen Beetle or like could you sleep in there? Like what was that like?
Okay, no, totally fair question. I say car, calling the truck. I've got it's a 2004 Lexus GX 370. It's like an old mom mobile. It even has the flip down DVD player in the back. It's awesome. And my partner has sort of converted it into an overlanding machine. So, it's got amazing 4-wheel drive capabilities. We put a little refrigerator in the back. I've got a little stove in the back. And then on the roof, we put a rooftop tent.
Oh, cool.
So, it's kind of like van life, but like hobo van life. I set up a standing desk out of the back of it where I could work and, just stand up out of the back of it. It was great. It was so great. And I was literally outside, most of the time.
How has the pandemic changed your relationship with work, or how has it changed how you foresee your future career?
I think, we've always had a pretty autonomous work culture. We're not clocking in, we're not clocking out. Get your work done. And everybody wants to be there. Everybody wants to be doing this. So, there's never been that. But I think it sort of increased that sense of autonomy and, like the introduction of quiet time, for example, where that's a time, you won't have meetings. If you want to put your head down and, get some deep, flow work in, do that. If you need to run to the grocery store, you have that window. I think that flexibility broadened quite a bit, if that makes sense, because of the pandemic. At the end of the day, it's always just been do your job, but it was a lot that was really emphasized, I think, with the pandemic. And, I don't have kids. I can't imagine, trying to take care of kids and juggle everything. And so, that autonomy and that flexibility was a huge blessing to me. And I can only, just multiply that by 100 for people taking care of other humans.
So how overall would you say your work has changed during the pandemic?
That's a good question too. I think, well, it's definitely picked up. But I think with the combination of quiet time as well as 3-day weekends, that allowed me, especially when I was traveling, to really put my head down, get my stuff done Monday through Thursday, wake up Friday, maybe do some administrative stuff, wrap up loose ends, and then go out into the mountains,
Yeah.
and come back Monday. And yeah, it was great.
I mean, it sounds like a self-serving comment, but it's really not. I honestly, I think we've had 3-day weekends now for over a year. I don't know, how long exactly we've had it. And I'm very intentionally called a 3-day weekend, not a 4-day work week. Because, when you call it a 4-day work week, then Friday becomes like this weird neutral zone of like, okay, well, we can have some meetings on Friday, right? We can do, it's like, no, it's the weekend. So use the same rules on a Friday that you use for a Saturday or Sunday. But I don't know how people work 5 days a week in this environment. I really don't. So after doing this, 3-day weekend for as long as we have, and knowing that inevitably some things do slip into, I've got to do some work on Friday every now and then, et cetera, et cetera. But it used to be that you'd work, 5 days, 10, 12, 8 hours a day, whatever. And then you'd still have a little bit of work to do on Saturday. And so, you might have a day and a half, right on the weekend. And with all of the stressors that we experienced through the pandemic and are still experiencing, I have no idea, honestly, how people can keep their shit together. I forgot to tell you the story, by the way. I was out camping in Caddo Lake. Have you ever been to Caddo Lake?
It's been a long time. We lived in East Texas. I was in 4th grade there. But yeah, we used to go there.
God, I love Caddo Lake. We go at least once a year. And my son, Jack, is 7 years old now. And we're into hammock camping now.
Nice.
So we don't do tents anymore. We do hammocks. And we were setting up the hammocks and sitting by the campfire. And Jack asked if I had any of that food that we ate that one time. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, the food in the bag that you pour the water into, like we had when we were out camping at Mineral Wells. And we saw your friend on the trail. You remember that time we ran into you on the trail?
Yes, I do.
Wells?
Oh my gosh. And that was at the very beginning of the pandemic too.
Yeah. And Jack was like 5 years old and he still remembered that and like running into you and then sitting down on the trail. Like, you cross that bridge over the highway on that hike. And we sat on the other side and had some like mountain house, dehydrated meals that he just like loved. I think it was like chili cheese or something like that.
That's so funny.
Pretty funny.
That's so funny. I'm impressed you remember that.
Were you ever afraid of losing your job?
Good question. I think there was some uncertainty. I mean, probably everyone was feeling that. But I don't feel like I was, it was kind of like, what's going to happen? But, with the change to our one team approach, and kind of reorganizing the way we work and the roles we fill and the jobs we do, I felt like there was a very high priority on our people, that we're going to take care of each other and figure this out.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you that question. How do you think your experience compared to friends or family or just other people that you knew as we've been going through the same period together?
It is pretty amazing. I mean, on one end of the spectrum, one of my very best friends is a medical ICU nurse. And she started about 6 months before the pandemic started. So, we go run a couple mornings, go walk before work, during the week, and we compare notes, and it's like, that really puts things into perspective. It's like your problems, that's some real shit. My problems, first world. Yeah. I mean, just the experiences, not only obviously being a nurse and just being a nurse in a pandemic, but also the employer-employee relationship there is much much different. Just the way that power balance is sort of assigned, if that makes sense, or sort of, yeah. But I think that was obviously one of the most contrasting experiences. But even on a lesser scale, seeing friends who have to, clock in every day, or, they're being hounded constantly to make sure they're working, or it's like, we're all grown-ups here.
What do you think the Starr Conspiracy as an organization, whether it's, all of us together or, whatever, what do you think we did right during the pandemic?
I think that we prioritized each other and our people, and I feel like we trust each other, and every decision we made was sort of based on that trust and that prioritization of each other, where I think it would have been really easy to, pull in and look out for yourself, especially just with so much uncertainty. And I think, I don't know, maybe to some extent that's human nature, you start prioritizing yourself. But I think just doing it as a team, and also talking about it and changing things as we go, let's try this. It may not work. It may work, but we'll adjust it as we go. There's no guidebook for this. There's no rule book. We're just kind of making this up as we go, and we'll see what works. And let's trust each other to have the best intentions, and we're all in this together. But that sounds really cheesy as it's coming out of my mouth, but I really mean that. I think that's a unique thing that we have.
And I would really just kind of direct this one to me. Like, what did I do wrong, or what could we have done better in terms of creating, a good experience? As crazy as that sounds, like, create a good experience during the pandemic. But what were the things that we got really wrong?
My answer is going to be a little bit twofold. I think we, as an agency, because we're so passionate and because we care so much, when we make changes, we tend to jump in 200%, big sweeping changes. We're going to, solve this overnight, or, we're going to change everything overnight. And I think to some extent, that's always a little bit of our Achilles heel, is just changing too much at once. But sort of the flip side of that was with the pandemic. I think this was an event that actually called for a complete overhaul.
Yeah, I remember. Sense. It does. It was an opportunity. It really was to, kind of make some bold changes. Because I do think that there was the context, that kind of required it, or at least, created a mandate for it. But I do remember some really dumb things that I did. And top of my list, you remember that time we had the client draft where we basically said we're going to redistribute, we're going to balance the workload by everyone choosing, 3 clients to, because some people had 10 clients or whatever, and some people had a couple of clients, and some people weren't, managing clients. They were working on, the projects or whatever. And we were trying to distribute the management of clients around the entire team. I mean, it kind of achieved what we needed to achieve, which was to break all of the preconceptions about how we were going to do things, just break those down, eliminate any, kind of, tie to comfort around the way that we used to do things. So from that perspective, it was successful, but geez Louise, that was just like a terrible time for everybody.
I mean, we'd never done it before. It was worth a try. It didn't work so well, but
did not work well.
We can always pull it back. Yeah. And I totally forgot about that. It was kind of like fantasy football. We just sort of went around and picked your team.
What has been the weirdest or funniest thing that happened to you during the pandemic?
One of my favorite stories from the summer. I love pickles. I put them on everything. I bring them everywhere. Like if I'm backpacking, I'm going to bring pickles, almond butter, honey, and tortillas. That's my jam. So I was hiking along one day and a couple miles in, and I kept smelling this smell, and it was this heavenly, it smelled like dill. And I'm just, the sun's out, the birds are chirping, it smells like delicious pickles. I'm in my element. I keep a sketchbook with me that I carry and, paint. And I even made a note that the Weminuche National Forest smells like pickles. It smells so good, and I'm just happy as a clam. And a couple miles later, I opened my backpack and my pickle jar had spilled. And that's what I was smelling. There's no such thing as wild mountain dill. There's no plant growing in the mountains that smells like dill. It was just all of my stuff was soaked in pickle juice. So
what lessons have you learned during the pandemic?
I got to meet a lot of different people, and I got to really talk to a lot of different people, different walks of life, different background, different beliefs, people that I never would have come into contact with. I mean, I think that's why we travel, right? That's new experiences, new people. But I feel like it was really timely for me to kind of examine a lot of my own biases and preconceptions about people, and, a lot of beliefs that I hold very strongly, but also maybe I was cutting out people, or I was judging people preemptively before I heard their side of the story, if that makes sense. And I think that was a huge gift to me, to kind of examine my approach and different people I got to meet.
Do you think it's possible that the pandemic is going to make the world a better place?
Well, there's good stuff to come out of it. Will it make it a better place? I don't know. That seems a little like a bit of a sweeping comment, but I think there's definitely a lot of things that will be better.
Yeah, me too. I was like, this kid just like has these.
I guess you also don't easily forget dried chili very quickly.
No. Yeah. Never your first time. You never forget the first dried chili you ate. And so we all showed up on this big call and basically, had like a fantasy football draft for clients.
I forgot about that. That was very early on.
That was awful. Yeah, I feel so bad. Like one of the, I chose 3 clients, and one of the clients that I chose, Matt Lee, was just devastated by it. I had no idea because he really wanted to work with that client and manage that account. And I felt like I was doing people a favor, and I just underestimated the level of passion that people had for, their attachment to clients. And that was a big learn for me. I think he stumbled on a product category though, because I think there's a strong correlation between people who love the outdoors and people who love pickles, because I also love pickles and love the outdoors. And carrying pickles is a real challenge. I think there should be like a camping pickle box or something where, leaking of pickles doesn't happen, because it can be hard to get that smell out of everything that
this is a real problem. And no matter what container or how many times you wrap them up, that juice finds its way out.
Yeah, you're gonna have to call Yeti. Tell me you need a pickle box.
Product ideas.